Run.
Welcome back to episode 10 of the Monday Morning Directing Podcast. I'm Hobo, and with me, as always,
It's Rick.
thanks, Rick. And today we've got a very spooky Halloween episode for our first double digit episode. We're doing Alien Romulus, which I have not seen some of the more recent Alien movies. I've seen the first three, but I haven't seen Prometheus or I forget the name of the others.
Yeah, it's Prometheus and Covenant were the two recent ones directed by Ridley Scott himself, who obviously did the very original Alien film.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, this one was weird. I'd say weird is a good descriptor for I think this one. It is. I mean, we'll talk about it more in depth in a bit, but it is kind of a hodgepodge of every single Alien film before.
Yeah, I mean, it has some interesting things. I will say that I did not dislike the movie. I actually thought it was okay for what it was.
Yeah, I mean it's it hits all the story beats you kind of want it to hit in an alien film, you know. It's
Right.
always like, "Oh wow, abandoned station. Let's go explore. Oh wait, we're not alone." And it's like that shit like I've seen it enough times where I was like, okay, let's can we try something else?"
I mean, I
Maybe.
suppose, but I mean, so much of that is just deeply entrenched in the horror genre in general, isn't it? Where, you even go back to like the real, like old classics, like, the old Dark House from 1932, and that's like the same thing. It's like these people they're caught in a storm. They go to like this old creepy house where there's a creepy family living there, and weird things happen. And it's like, you see that in slasher movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is literally the exact same premise. Um, and I don't know. I feel like that's just such a common aspect of the horror genre that you kind of have to accept that.
Yeah, I think maybe it's just the fact that I thought it borrows I think so much from the other films. It
Mm.
on its own doesn't really stand up. I'm like, what do you do uniquely that the other ones don't do? And I was like, I mean, very little,
Sure,
really.
sure. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm
Before we get too deep into spoiler territory, can we just talk about a couple of the things that like we enjoyed about the movie
sure,
and
sure.
our general thoughts? Because number one, I thought this movie had some phenomenal effects. Like, there was obviously like a big mix of CG and practical effects, but a lot of the close-ups of the creatures were practical effects. They looked great. I mean, they've looked great since the 70s, but I mean, really, really cool looking. Um, and I would personally say that this movie was worth it for the final act alone.
Yep. It's a very enjoyable final act. I dug the cinematography, the visuals were great, set
Yeah,
design immaculate,
yeah,
It
yeah.
was it was all I was rooting for this movie. I want you to know I was rooting for this movie. It's just
Sure,
the script was just too like, okay, I've seen this all. Like where
sure.
give me something new. At least like you have Alien and then you had Aliens. I got something new with Aliens. Alien 3. I got something new. It was really brutal,
Mm,
but I
mm,
still got something new with each one. And this
mm,
is the first time where the new thing, and we'll get into that later because that is spoiler,
mm.
was actually done better. It was drawn from Resurrections, not to go too deep into spoilers, but
But yep,
it was actually done better than Resurrections did it, I would
yeah,
say.
yeah. No, and so from this point on, we're talking about spoilers. If you haven't seen it and you want to see it, go see it. Otherwise, listen to our potentially better version, maybe. Um, but yeah, so this movie starts out on a mining colony, which I actually really thoroughly enjoyed because, to my knowledge, it's the first time that we've ever seen in the Alien universe like civilization that is actually like working the way it should. Um, and rather than like in Aliens, you see this uh it is a colony, but it's already been destroyed by the time they get there, or like in Alien, it's a spaceship like far away from civilization. Alien 3, it's a prison colony. So like you never actually see um everyday life in this universe until now. And I thought it was visually interesting. I thought it was neat. I thought they had a really good they did a really good job of early on establishing. I mean, not that they really needed to establish that Weyland Yutani is a bunch of dickheads, but they established that early on. They establish how uh, terrible it is to live on a colony in this universe.
Right.
And
I think just to interject a little bit,
mm,
I had a good chuckle when the main girl, played by Kaylee Spaney, I believe that's how you say her name. She plays
okay,
Rain.
yep, Rain,
She's like, okay, I've done my 12,000 hours. I want to go to whatever planet it
yeah,
was. I don't
yeah,
remember.
yeah,
But they're like, oh, sorry, we had to up the quota, and it just
yeah,
doubles her requirement on the
yeah,
spot.
yeah.
I had a good chuckle at that scene.
With kind of like the implication to me at least being that that was like they were doing that just for the sake of doing it. There was no actual quota that needed to be doubled. They're just like trying to perpetuate the cycle of servitude right to the company.
Right,
And
because Alien has always kind of gone hand in hand with like a commentary on like capitalism, right?
sure, and specifically with Weyland Yutani being like the true villain in every movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it's like the xenomorphs are the things that are the threat, but they wouldn't be an issue if Weyland Yutani didn't keep sending people to go grab them. Um, again, this was kind of the first movie where it really felt like the main characters were operating outside of the typical system of like the Weyland Yutani like corporate bullshit. And it provided a really good motivation, I feel, for the characters. Like you understood why they were so desperate to get out of that situation and why they were willing to risk so much. But the first issue to me comes with the fact that even though like the motives for all these characters, you're like, okay, I get it. They're all like you never spend any time actually getting to know them. Like I can't even I don't know. I can't think of a single character trait of any of the characters aside from Bjorn being a dickhead and then Rain being the main character and Andy being an android. Like that was it.
Right. Of the main cast, I mean, I feel like we both agree that Andy was the big star. He actually stood out, was entertaining to watch.
I was rooting for him the whole time, even when he was intentionally trying to get the humans killed. Because I'm like, nah, Andy's like carrying you guys. Like he's kind of a badass. Like he's really like and there's this thing where it's like, he's very calculating and inhuman in that way, but he isn't and this is I guess true of like a lot of the androids in the Alien series, that like he's cold and calculating, but he's not cruel. And I don't know, it's almost like the Vulcan thing from Star Trek where it's just like pure logic. And I'm like, you know what? He's all right. Like I know he's like putting the company first and he's trying to screw over all these people, but he's the one doing all the work. So, let him, he can have this. Like
I mean, I feel like it, again, being an alien film, they have to feel compelled to have the quote unquote company man, you know?
right, right,
And and they managed to yoink a chip from a deep faked Ian Holm.
which was
Gross.
terrible, by the way. It was so
Does not
bad.
work. Did not work whatsoever.
I feel like I probably could have had the same quality of effects done on my phone with like some AI deepfake program. Like it looked really, really bad.
Just hire another actor. Like
Yeah,
another thing, I'm gonna go a little bit tangent. Ian Holm was in one Alien movie 50 years ago.
yeah.
I don't know. He was only brought back. That definitely feels like probably like a Disney call. It's like we need someone recognizable in this film.
Yeah, and I get that, because they have the thing where um I don't even want to say his character because he's not actually acting in it, but the android that uses his likeness is Rook, which is a reference to his character in the first movie, Bishop, right? Because it's the chess theme. And it almost like confused me for a second because I for a brief second I forgot that the character's name was Bishop. And I'm like, oh wait, is this the same android? And then I had to, remember. Um, but
Right.
because he kind of has the same thing going on where like he's been bisected in that way, and it's supposed to be the same actor even though it's a deep fake. I feel like in at least the first two Alien movies, in Alien and Aliens, so much of the first act is like getting you to like the characters that they're going to kill off. And that was the thing that really set the first Alien apart from a lot of other um science fiction at that time, is that it depicted like everyday like working class people in the far future, right?
Right.
Um, and because in the first one it's I mean essentially they're like galactic truckers almost. You know what I mean? Like they're
Yeah, they're
super.
hauling cargo. They're doing
Yeah,
something, you
yeah,
know.
and they're like super like salt of the earth, like common people.
They're working Joes.
And in Aliens it's like they're Marines, they're grunts. You know what I mean? They're like
Right.
not, they don't spend enough time, I feel, establishing any of the characters in this film. Um,
Right.
they're kind of brought in and then immediately thrust into the situation. And there were like lots of like, again, the world building for this was like really good. I thought the situations that they were put in throughout the station were all really like creative and interesting. Um, and I felt like it was decent science fiction. Um, but when these characters died, I felt nothing. It
Yeah,
was
maybe
no.
it's because with especially the first Alien, they run across it purely kind of by chance, right?
Sure.
So they pick up a signal like, what the hell is this? Let's go land, right?
Okay.
In this movie, what they're trying to do is they're trying to actually cheat Wayland Yutani a little bit. They're all
Mm,
sick. All of their work quotas have been up. They're like, guys, we cannot
mm,
stay on this planet for another 6 years and
mhm,
die of lung cancer.
mhm.
So their idea is to go on this what they initially think is a ship and later find out is a full-on station, is
Right.
to steal cryopods,
Yep.
just so they can then travel 9 years to this planet.
Yep.
Um, I was with them for it. I'm like, okay, I get it. You're trying to screw over Wayland Yutani. They suck. I'm with it. But
Yep.
the problem is, I just didn't find majority of the characters likable.
No, it was very odd because there's like this moment because the really big like dickhead is Bjorn because he's bullying Andy because he's an android.
Right?
And uh they have this brief moment where they're like, oh yeah, no, it's because his mother was essentially killed by an android who made the decision of um sacrificing her for the sake of like other people, right?
Right.
And um and I get that the point of that was to set up Andy and his actions later on, but it really seemed like it was going to go for like humanizing Bjorn and like making him like, oh yeah, he's a dickhead, but he's got his reasons, and like and they were going to extrapolate on that, and they just didn't. They straight up did not.
They do all of this kind of setup to kind of have Bjorn be like the unsung hero a little
Yeah,
bit. They
yeah,
do all of this where it's like, yes, he's a dickhead. And then they
he got
show
his
him it's like
reasons.
he has his reasons. He doesn't like androids. And then he's the second one to die, you know?
Yeah, and it's like, oh man, like really, like that's
Like
it.
don't get me wrong, I understand in a horror movie there's the concept of the cannon fodder character, right? You
Sure.
have to have one or two just die for entertainment value. I get it.
Which was the Asian lady who I don't even remember them naming.
Navarro,
Aro, yeah.
you kill her off, she was kind of boring. Whatever.
And she was the face hugger like has to the face
Right.
hugger has to attach to somebody so that they can.
Right.
by the way, kind of unrelated, very stupid scene, I feel, where they introduce the X-ray device, which was from a prior movie as well, if I remember correctly, where like you can kind of see through the skin and see like underneath and see the xenomorph. And you think they're setting it up so that when the face hugger attaches, they can see it inside of her, but they don't do that because after it the facehugger detaches and the xenomorph is already like bursting out of her chest, she for whatever reason decides she's going to take it, put it behind her back to show everyone like, oh my god, look, there's an alien inside of me, oh my god, I'm dying. And it's like, really, like that's what we're doing. It was very stupid. but
Right.
but like have that throwaway character, like that's fine. And then actually like give me something for everybody else, because it was really like, even Rain, i had no I had no reason to care for her. She had very little characterization, honestly, aside from the fact that she like values Andy. um and like, I don't know, Andy should have been like he felt like the star of the film. Like he was the only interesting character.
Yeah, I feel like they should have definitely leaned more on Bjorn and Kay. I thought Kay was also interesting as a character.
Yeah.
I mean, well, interesting. I mean, her character is just that I'm pregnant, which I would like a little bit more depth to that, but there's a connection
Well,
that is revealed.
yeah, I mean, it's the
Very, very horribly revealed.
yeah, very horribly revealed, because it's implied. And I think you and I, when we saw it, we were both kind of like, that's really like,
We picked up on it, and then we only got confirmation, by the way, and this is 100% true. A couple hours after seeing their film, our friend that we also went to go see the film with sends us a link to a Reddit thread in which the director himself just confirms it that Bjorn is the father of Kay's child.
yeah, which I kind of suspected, because she's like, oh, it's like,
Some
some
asshole.
asshole. And
Yeah,
I'm like, and he's like very clearly like the biggest asshole he's the only asshole in the movie, actually.
right.
And then like, as they're like leaving each other, they get like really close and really intimate for cousins. And I'm like, that's a bit odd. I don't know about all that. Like that's kind of, and
Yeah.
then and then it turns out, oh, they there's incest. It's like, oh, that's crazy.
I It was crazy, but at least for one moment in the film, I'm like, oh shit, I did not expect this. I was
Yeah.
like, that is interesting. You
But they
know,
never extrapolate on it. They
it
never
leads
actually
to
talk
nothing.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um
the fact we had to find out through Fede Alvarez himself just saying it on a Reddit thread, like, come on, man.
yeah, it was a bit like, and don't get me wrong, it might have been a thing where the studio is like, yeah, maybe let's not like have like incest be a prominent part of this movie, because I get that that's not really as marketable, but I mean, I don't know,
Yeah,
man.
I don't know if like Disney is trying to look. It's like I don't really think the Alien film fits with the core values of the Disney brand. Like, it's a fucking Alien movie.
Yeah,
Like, let it be weird.
yeah. I mean, you have a monster running around that's got a penis head. That's, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
they have lots of like really weird stuff already. I mean, because H.R. Giger, who is the entire where the xenomorph and all of the alien designs come from. Um, the entire point of H.R. Giger's work is that it's a monsterification of sexuality, and especially sexual organs, which is why, like, there's the thing where, um, which I don't believe I've ever seen in an alien movie before, where after the chest burster runs off, you normally don't see it, but then it runs off and then it goes into like this cocoon thing, which has a orifice very like disturbingly similar to a vulva, which the Bjorn takes the electric prodding stick, sticks it inside of to shock the alien, and that was like really like,
yeah. It's
that was really uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like, because it's very like oddly sexual, but like in a disgusting way. And then the xenomorphs have very phallic heads, and I mean, this entire movie deals with a lot of like really weird sexual themes, and it's like incest is where we draw the line. Like, I mean, I get it, but like, I feel like we were already dealing with a lot of really uncomfortable stuff. I don't feel like incest was that further of a step beyond, you know?
Right. And it's there's always that kind of like when we're talking about like the pacing generally of an alien film.
Hmm.
Um it's always like the chest burst, like it's calm, the chest burster scene happens, and then the alien goes away for like a substantial amount of time actually
Yep.
because it's got to grow,
Yep.
right? This movie, it's instantaneous almost. Like 2 minutes later, it's in the cocoon, and then Bjorn's prodding it with the what is it? The electric stick
Electric
he
shock.
has.
But
Yeah, the
but we're
shocker.
but it's also like, I mean, it's shown immediately in the timeline of like us watching the film, but because like the ship crashes, I think it's implied that there's been like a long period of time before they wake up, and then it's already in the cocoon state after that.
Hmm. Yeah, I would have just assumed that. I mean, we kind of know that xenomorphs are intelligent,
Yeah,
right? That
somewhat.
it would have just went to a really secluded area and then went into its cocoon state, right? Rather
Hmm.
than right in the hallway, you know?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, I'm not sure. It's, because very typically, because again, it's never been seen before, so like I would think that that's typical, but maybe it's because it's such a small ship or something that it needs to just take whatever it can get.
Right. And
I
then
mean,
meanwhile, uh I think while this is happening with the alien on board the ship,
mhm.
um Andy, Rain, and Tyler are like stealthing through the face hugger. There's like a
Yeah,
room filled with face huggers,
yeah.
and their solution is to up the temperature to match their body temperature
Mhm.
so that the face hugger can't detect them.
Right. Which I just thought was like fairly interesting world building, and it was interesting, but
Yeah. And I believe at this point is Andy evil? Yeah.
yeah, he because they had already put the chip inside of him.
Right. Yes. All the face huggers got out because broke the glass door.
Yeah,
It's in
and
the water. It's in,
but
somebody's moving in the water.
yeah, um, yeah, and I don't know. Uh, I feel like if they had kept uh Bjorn and Kay alive for a little bit longer, Bjorn could have had his redemption arc. You could have actually made him an interesting character, and you also could have had the thing where you can extrapolate on their relationship, and um I suppose you don't have to like uh deal with it that much, but I mean, like, maybe acknowledge it more in the movie, aside from just like they're looking at each other pretty oddly for cousins, and then that's it.
Yeah.
um
It's yeah. And also I think possibly the dumbest character in this entire film is Tyler. He A was just completely bland, and second of all,
yep.
Tyler answered the radio when specifically Andy said be quiet while they're traversing through the facehugger room.
Yeah, I mean,
That just felt like conflict for the sake of, oh guys, it's been too long. We need another sequence, you know? Let's
yeah,
have
I get
him
it.
answer radio so they all chase him.
Yeah, I get it, but I mean, I don't know. I felt like we knew that was coming. Like, they're not gonna have a room full of face huggers where they just perfectly stealth through and it's completely fine. So
Yeah.
I'm not like torn up about that. Is it a little bit stupid? Yeah, but it's whatever. I can, my suspension of disbelief is intact, because I get it that, like, she's his sister, and they, so I get it, like, but he is ridiculously boring. And
Yes.
there's a good section where, for a good portion of the movie, it kind of becomes uh like it goes into action mode, which I know you had like kind of an issue with, um where they get guns, they got the aimbot guns, and they are um running around, like, kind of, I mean, they don't actually kill that many until the one slow motion, or not slow motion, I guess it's just a zero gravity scene. I mean, our mutual friend Dane uh really enjoyed that scene. he thought it was great. And I thought it was fine,
I
but
thought the idea that they have to account for the fact that the blood is acidic
mhm,
was, oh, it's like, oh, okay, so they have this OP weapon, but they have to be smart about it.
yeah,
But the solutions didn't feel that smart to me regardless. They just turned off gravity and still just opened fired, and then somehow the blood just didn't float to the doors,
yeah,
or the walls or anything. It was kind of like, you set
yeah.
yourself up for something to happen, but it was just less interesting, you know?
Sure. What would you
Um,
have done in its place then, as like a scenario? Uh, since they set up the idea that they have these guns, but they have to use them sparingly, what would be your solution?
well, I mean, I think personally, I would have just removed the guns.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Gone full horror.
Yeah, yeah. Just say, the guns are either just like too hard to reach, get through, or something like that, or they're strewn about the station. They can't find them. It's just that I don't know. It's whenever this movie was trying to be aliens, I was just kind of checked out because I don't want to just see like a bunch of guys get guns and then shoot xenomorphs. Because I think then you're switching from horror to action, which is fine in the concept of the sequel, right? Aliens is totally much different from the very
Yep.
first Alien film.
It's an action movie and not a horror movie.
Yeah, it's action, it's fully action. The problem is this movie is trying to have its cake and eat it too. That's kind of what it felt like. They're just trying to, oh, okay, now this is an action section, and we're just going to waste all the xenomorphs with the guns. And then it's like, okay,
So I will say that it is my opinion that the point of the guns and them killing all the xenomorphs is to build up the false hope, which you cash in when the hybrid creature comes out.
yeah, I
Because
would agree. I would agree with you because at the end of Aliens, right? They think they got away. They're on the
yep,
ship, right? But then plot twist, the queen is stowed away on the ship, right? And Ripley's got to fight it.
yep,
So in this movie, the problem with the false ending or the false sense of security is that you see you see Kay, I believe, inject herself with the goo. By the
right,
way, and we didn't mention this. They find this goo we're talking about is the goo from Prometheus and Covenant that um, Michael Fassbender's character experiments with to help create the xenomorph. Something. It's been a while since I've seen those movies, but the
uh,
goo is directly from those two
it's
movies.
it's their like DNA that has he's using as medicine, or is trying to use as medicine, to like fix his aging and all that stuff, because uh the xenomorphs can like manipulate their DNA like at will, basically, because it's like the established lore that whatever the face hugger like latches onto, they obtain traits from that thing.
Right. Yeah, and they're trying to come up with this cure-all type of thing.
Yeah.
But the mistake they do is they show Kay injecting herself. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
sitting there as the audience member just waiting because I know
Mm-hmm.
something's going to happen
No, you're right.
rather than being caught off guard.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I thought that was just poorly done. Another thing like I really had a problem with was the station itself. Like it was boring. Like visually the station was boring cuz like I've seen a lot of alien films. I can only see hallway number 3 and lab number 17 so many times.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm like, okay, this is a station where people lived on. Show me a food court. Show me housing. Show me
Right.
maybe there's a really cool greenhouse section and they're gonna
Right.
fight a xenomorph in there. So
Right.
it switches to like a jungle atmosphere.
Right.
Use the station, which they
Right.
don't do at
Right.
all.
No, I think that's completely fair. So moving on, um the final act, spectacular. The
Yeah.
hybrid creature looks fucking phenomenal and genuinely like creepy as hell.
Yep.
It's
Freaky
it's a
design.
it's a
Freaky,
very
freaky design.
freaky design. There is that one shot which I'm sure anyone who's seen the movie will recognize, where you first see it in that little hallway with like the strobe lighting, and without any loud noise, without any jump scare, I was legitimately like scared of
Hmm.
this thing in the shadows because it's so eerie looking. Um, and that's like one of the first times where I got like legitimately scared from a movie that wasn't a jump scare in a long time.
This movie is fairly good with avoiding jump scares. I don't think there's too many.
There's a couple. There's a couple.
I mean, they're always, I feel like they're always just going to do jump scares when it's related to like the face hugger, but like outside of the face hugger, I don't remember like a xenomorph jump scare or anything like that. It has been a couple weeks, but I don't remember any overtly disgusting or just gross jump scares that are just
Yeah,
cheap
sure.
shots.
Sure, yeah. I mean, in general, like I mean, the first act of the movie is very, very suspenseful. Um and you know, they do a good job of that because the audience obviously knows that this space station is bad news because we've seen the prior films and we know that there's going to be an alien on board it, but we're just waiting for it to come. And there's so many scenes where really early on when they're like going through the cryo tanks and like the weird like air vent and stuff, and they're like walking around the station, there's like not any you know, there's you don't see any xenomorphs, you don't see any face huggers for kind of a little bit, and then they kind of throw that out the window when it goes into action mode, and then uh, in the last bit it gets brought back.
We all caught this. Everyone in the theater caught this. You get away from her, you bitch. You know that
Yeah,
line.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, clear fan service,
clear fan service,
but I didn't hate it. I chuckled a little bit. I liked it.
but there's absolutely no reason for Andy to say that because first of all, he's a synthetic, right? And generally speaking, program synthetics to avoid cussing.
Yeah.
To be like very easy to work with. You know,
They also
and
generally don't program synthetics to crack dad jokes. So I don't know. I thought it was good because so much of the film is like it shows him being a badass with you know the Wayland Yutani like chip, and then the chip gets removed, and it's like, oh no, I'm still a badass, right? Like I'm still a little bit like awkward and like not operating as fully as I was, but he still has that badass moment, and I still think it's cool.
I agree with what you're saying. It feels like payoff when there is no setup. Because he stutters through that line, right? It feels like
Right.
he's fighting his code. He's fighting his own code. His Just so his willpower is stronger, so he can say what he wants to say,
Yeah.
right? But there's no setup where he is either like struggling to cuss or someone makes fun of him for it or something like that. It kind of felt out of nowhere a little bit for me.
This may be a bit of reading into stuff that isn't actually in the world building, but it feels to me that he somehow learned from his experience with the Wayland Yutani chip, right? And even though he doesn't have that code anymore, I think it's kind of established that androids are at least advanced enough that he can learn to an extent, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I like maybe he got something out of it without it changing his personality in the way that it did at first, right? And you know, I thought it was like a good arc for his character, and I get that it might not make as much sense as it would for a human character, but I still thought it was nice. I thought it was a good character arc. Andy again proving to be the only likable person on that ship.
Right. Yeah, and he's not even a person.
He is a person.
No, synthetics have no rights.
No daughter of mine is gonna date a bot. Um, so yeah. Um, but yeah, the hybrid creature was very it was very well done, and you know you see a lot of symbolism in this movie that is very clearly teasing the hybrid, but you just don't know it. Like
Right.
there's the scene where they first get on board the station, and there's like the mural, there's like the painting, where you know it shows a close up of the infant suckling from the breast of his dead mother. And it's like that's like really, you know, first off disturbing, but also like symbolic because that's what happens, right? Um, and you know, even the symbolism of Romulus in the title being Romulus and Remus is very symbolic because the whole point is that they are um, infants that are suckling from the teat of the she wolf, right? Which is like
Right.
not like a monster, but it is a monster, right? And the idea behind what's going on in that station is humanity gaining stuff from the monster that is the xenomorph, right? And you know, one of the things that is striking to me about the analogy between the mythological story is that Romulus kills Remus, right? And so I wonder if there's some symbolism there that after the infusion of that monstrous ancestry into humanity, that we would tear ourselves apart. But
Sure.
you know, but there was a our mutual friend had a very, very interesting premise for I guess a more literal interpretation of the Romulus and Remus aspect of this movie.
Yeah.
Um, with the idea being that you could have had two hybrids that were twins because obviously Romulus and Remus are twins
Right. And I honestly thought that the hybrid was the best part of this movie, and sadly
by
was
far.
in the shortest like sequence, right?
Yeah.
Shortest part of the film. I was hoping for a story, right? Okay, same exact premise. They got to steal the cryopods, right? That's all fine. The first honestly, like the first 40, 30, 40 minutes of this movie are fine. They're great, you know.
Yeah.
I
It's suspenseful. I thought it was well done.
so maybe they are on I don't know. Maybe they're on the Remus side of the station and they have to traverse on foot to the Romulus side. And maybe there already is a hybrid on the station, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's hunting them, and maybe it's scaring away even the xenomorphs. So now we're like, oh, something's really bad if the xenomorphs are running away, right?
I don't know if I like that though,
Okay, I
because
was thinking either it's scaring them or it's commanding them or something. It's having some effect on the xenomorphs that we have not seen
yeah, I would
before.
much prefer if it's commanding them because it's been kind of established in like a lot of other stuff that anything that has xenomorph DNA like is attached to the hive mind. I'm trying to remember correctly, but I believe in Alien versus Predator Requiem, um,
Oh God, are we counting those movies?
I, they're a part of the lore, I think,
I haven't seen either of the two, so I know they take place in modern day, right?
because yeah,
Not the future.
yeah they take place in modern day, and the idea is that what's his name Wayland is present for the Alien versus Predator stuff, and that's how he learns about the xenomorphs, and that's why Wayland Yutani is after them for the rest of time is because he learns about them in the present day.
Interesting. Okay.
Um, I believe you know the Predator Alien hybrid that's in Requiem. I believe is like attached to the hive mind. Um, and like there's the thing where like in Resurgence, Ripley's clone that like stars in the movie is has the xenomorph DNA and is thus kind of attached to the hive mind a little bit, even though it's far weaker.
That's specifically why I believe the hybrid doesn't kill Ripley at the end of it, because it
Yeah,
looks at her and realizes
recognizes
she's
it.
one of a yeah, she's part of
Yep.
the mind.
And so, you know, I would think that the hybrid would then be a part of the hive mind, and because it's more human than even the other xenomorphs, because the other xenomorphs are also they have human DNA, which is why they're bipedal instead of quadrupedal, and they are somewhat intelligent. That if it has even more human DNA, that it's even more intelligent than the other xenomorphs.
Right. And going back to what I was saying, I think there should have been, by the time they get onto the ship, right? They're on one side, they got to get to the other side, they got to do it on foot.
Mm-hmm.
There should be, I feel like, already a hybrid there. It doesn't literally have to be Kay's kid.
I think it does.
You think it does?
I think it does because if well, especially if we're going off of the twin thing, um, but also like again, like so much of this movie is based off of like the uh it's a very typical horror thing, the fear of motherhood, right? Like in Rosemary's Baby and Hereditary and like a lot of horror movies. Um like motherhood is like a scary like even honestly, if you go back to some of the old like Brothers Grimm fairy tales, like if you read like the original Hansel and Gretel, their mother is trying to abandon them in the woods to kill, you know what I mean? Like, and so
Right.
um the idea of that and that sort of very safe seeming relationship that all humans can relate to being violated is it's a very common thing in horror, right? And so I think and they do that a lot in this movie, and so I think that's linked to the core idea of this movie, and I don't think that that can be untangled. Does that make sense?
I was thinking that you have this hybrid, and it's
Yeah.
not explained what it is,
Yeah.
right? Throughout the movie, you have this weird new creature that's hunting them. It's also sending xenomorphs after them. It's really fucked, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you have Kay who is pregnant, right? And same thing goes down. She's injured at the end. She injects herself with the goo,
Yeah.
and then she gives birth. And then finally, the audience makes the connection on what that hybrid is, like what it really is. To be fair, I feel like the audience will pick up what it is by its design innately. But you have
Yeah.
something like that, and maybe there's a situation near the end of the movie where it's like, oh my god, it's two of these hybrids coming, but maybe one of the hybrids kills the other, fulfilling the story of like Romulus and Remus, right? Maybe they're like, no, there's only one of us. There's only gonna be one of us.
Interesting.
I I think it's a better way to have the more interesting element of this film be in the film longer. And that's like the big thing for me.
I think that in that we agree. The method that I would go about it is very different, but I think that the whole second act action part should have had one of the two hybrids in it. If we're going with the idea of two hybrids, which I think is an interesting idea, um, and I feel like the play would be to have them be twins by by K, right? And honestly, if you keep Bjorn alive for long enough, he can you can give him the arc where it's like he's got to fucking deal with his progeny, right?
Exactly.
That he's created, and um, you have again. I think they have to be twins. I don't think that it doesn't play on the symbolism in the same way if they are born of different mothers. You know, I think they have to be.
They have to be literal twins, not symbolic twins.
Yeah, I mean, because I suppose if you were to like say that they are twins via the xenomorph DNA, that's something I guess. But I think them being like literal twins, and one of them is loose on the station, and the other one is in the ship,
Right.
right? And then you just have this the second act, like be them figuring out how to deal with and kill the first hybrid creature. They figure it out. They deal with it. They get on the ship. They're about to escape, and then there's a second one, right? And now they don't have their weapons. They don't have anything, and then it's like, because honestly, I think that the beginning and ending 30 minutes of this movie were very good, and I don't think that they need to be changed. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think for actually for us to have, best of your version, best of my version to
Mm-hmm.
kind of work together in tandem, I think Kay has to die earlier for this to
I agree.
work.
I agree.
So Kay was an odd choice to leave to be one of the final survivors, you know?
Yeah.
She has to be she has to be on the ground team. She's got to be on the ship when they go. And maybe there's a sequence where she falls down something, but she disappears
Mm-hmm.
from the film.
Yep.
Something happens, she's gone.
Mm.
And then maybe this hybrid kind of pops out of nowhere. They're dealing with this hybrid, they're dealing with it
Yeah.
controlling the xenomorphs.
But you would have to show the scene where like she finds the goo and she injects it into herself, which would also mean that you would need to establish the goo far earlier than they do.
Right. So you have to establish the goo earlier.
Which honestly, they could just have Rook tell them that that's what's on the station instead of being
Sure.
mysterious about it.
Sure. So what you do is you can still keep that sweet, like kind of body horror scene of her giving birth, but you don't reveal that she gives birth to a second
Yeah,
hybrid. So
yeah,
you show
exactly.
one, and then
Yep.
she's dead or whatever,
Right.
and now this hybrid's on the loose, and then plot twist, twin. You
Hmm.
know, another
Hmm.
one's waiting for them right on the ship.
Yep. No, I like that a lot. And I think you can still keep in the interesting sci-fi element with Andy and him, sort of being taken over by his corporate programming, and then being where, they talk about him leaving Kay to die, right?
Right.
And they're like, how could you do such a thing? And he's like, what? Leaving someone behind? And that was a cold ass line. And I'm like, damn, Andy, like you right, like uh and so you can still have all of that in this version, um which is again like one of the more interesting parts of the movie. But then you can also have Bjorn being there as well. Bjorn maybe learns to like be like, you know what, Andy, you're okay.
Bjorn was easily the biggest disappointment of this film just because he's so underutilized.
Yep,
You know,
agreed.
it's he doesn't even need to survive the film.
No,
He should at least go down taking one of the hybrids out.
yeah, I agree. I think he could go down taking down the first one,
And
right? And it's like,
that he dies to a regular xenomorph because he doesn't know how to like stop, drop, and roll. Like he just stands
sure.
underneath when the acid. He's like, oh, I guess I'm dead.
But then you have that symbolic thing where it's like he's dealing with the consequences of his actions, basically, and then and maybe he accepts his fate as like dying, and it's a sacrifice. And
Yeah,
then, there were two, right?
yeah. Up. Oh, there's another one, and now you push the Rain character to the forefront. She's got to deal with it.
Yeah. No, and so in that I think we're in agreement that the it's kind of a shit sandwich, like the beginning and end are quite good, and then the middle is just it disappoints.
Yeah, it's
Um,
just a hodgepodge of just other ideas, reused, rehashed.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was why I was so my reaction to this was a little bit more negative, I think, than the average person, just because I was like, I see how easy it was. Like the good story was so easy for us. Like we got out of that movie and we're immediately just like, okay, why didn't they just do this? Why didn't they just do this?
Yeah.
Like it seems just like the script was just like, yeah, I don't know. It just wasn't creative enough. They didn't utilize like their own premise, which is so odd because
Sure.
the a big basis for this film, it was heavily inspired by Alien Isolation, the video game, right? And that entire video game, you are traversing through like every corner of this station trying to get
Mm.
out, right? Get your
Mhm.
friends out.
Right.
Again, here it's like you're not really traversing it that much, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think that the twin thing, shout out Arnov. He figured that out. Like that's some
Right.
like grade A symbolism
Shout out Arnoff.
uh that they missed out on, that I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. Because, and don't get me wrong, they do have a little bit of Romulus and Remus symbolism, but it's very understated, to the point where I think a lot of people wouldn't even recognize where it's coming from. Um
Right.
and so uh but it's like twins is like a very easy motif to go off of, and it's hard to miss that.
Yeah. So this movie made back its money. It's been doing quite well at the box office.
Sure.
Where do you think the Alien franchise is going now?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Because they're obviously setting up a sequel, because they have the ending scene where Rain gets away alive and she has Andy's chip and she's like, I'm going to rebuild you, right?
Right.
Um, because we've talked about this before, like a couple aspects of it. I know you talked about how you want to see what life is like on planets that aren't Weyland Yutani, or like in areas that are not controlled by Weyland Yutani.
Right. There's a whole like because Weyland Yutani is the unification of Japan and Britain, I believe, right? So
Okay.
they kind of like combine forces and they go off to kind of claim their quadrants of space. But there also is America. They have their own thing going. You have the Soviet Union. They have their own thing going. So I feel like we should take a step back from Wayland Yutani. They've kind of been at the forefront of all of this, and maybe
Mhm.
we need to see, how the other side lives. How are they
Right.
doing? What's going
Yeah.
on over there?
And it
You
would be
know?
interesting, I think, to see the ramifications of like Will and Yutani doing their fuckery on like people who have zero concept of what's going on.
Right.
Um, and like, even like the corpos in that system or whatever, don't like have any concept of the xenomorph because Wayland Yutani's been keeping it a secret and stuff.
Right. Do you think they're gonna do another movie after this one where it's like Alien Remus and they're gonna do what we said, where it's like, oh, actually Kay had
Alien.
another
Oh
one.
my god! If they named the next movie Alien Remus, that would actually be really funny.
It would be funny, but I think I would hate that movie just off the get-go. You
Yeah,
could have this could have been one movie.
Alien Remus. Actually, yeah, I don't know. That would be pretty. Uh, maybe, maybe. I could see them doing that though, and then maybe some of the deeper symbolism may be revealed in that movie,
Yeah.
the Romulus and Remus story. Um, yeah, that's I don't know. That's kind of interesting. Maybe. I think what I would like to see, because one of the reasons why I've really enjoyed this movie, I think probably more than the average person, is because I'm kind of just a. If you put a really neat, creepy looking monster on the screen for long enough, I'm gonna give you two thumbs up. Like I'm a sucker for that, and I'm pretty easy to satisfy in that respect. If the monster looks good and the monster looks interesting, I'm all for it. And so the hybrid creature alone like made the movie an enjoyable experience for me because I thought it was so like uncanny looking, and it had the weird, I don't even know how to describe it. It had like a weird triangular genitalia thing going on that was just like really creepy looking.
Right.
Again with the HR Giger shit, and all of the its movements were really creepy. The costume looked insanely good. The animatronics looked insanely good, and I would just love to see them extrapolating and expanding upon the idea that xenomorphs can evolve and they can take from the DNA of other creatures, and then expanding upon that with like showing us what it looks like when you have all of these facehuggers that maybe go out onto uh, this inhabited farming colony where there's a bunch of animals and shit, and you could have like an aliens style action movie where you have like a dozen different types of xenomorphs that have all diverged and evolved from different creatures.
Yeah.
And
That is actually a pretty interesting concept. Um keeps
I,
it
I I'm a sucker for that. So I would be really satisfied if they did something like that. Just show me a dozen different new creature designs, and I'm like, oh, sick.
I think what it is at this point, this franchise has been going on like 50 years, something like that.
Yeah, close
Um,
to.
I've seen, I feel like I've seen enough of the xenomorph itself. I know how it looks from every angle,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why this hybrid was so interesting. And that's
Yep.
why in Alien 3, it takes the form of a dog. It breaks
Yep.
out of a dog. So
And it's
yes,
it's
I need to
quadrupedal.
see more. Like, I'm tired of chest bursting humans. Chest
Yep.
burst another creature.
Yep.
Let me see a weirder design. Go
Yeah.
for it. Balls to the wall.
Yeah.
You
Let me
know?
see what happens when a xenomorph comes out of like a bull and it has like horns or some shit. Let me see what
Yeah.
happens when it comes out of an octopus and it's got like a bunch of limb. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and don't get me wrong. I understand the people who are really into Alien as a horror franchise over as like a more science fiction heavy franchise.
Right.
Um, but uh, and don't get me wrong, this movie proved that Alien is still the creature designs are still weird and foreign enough that it's still creepy and it's still scary. Um, but you know, Aliens is just as beloved of a movie as Alien, and uh, it has some horror aspects, obviously, but if I got another Aliens style action movie, I don't think a lot of people would be that upset about it because it's been established that Alien is also an action franchise in addition to being a horror franchise, and so um, I don't think it would ruffle too many feathers. And I just want to see monsters. That's my thing.
Yeah, maybe that I think it is a great sequel. Like imagine we'll continue with the idea that we're gonna step away from Wayland Yutani. Maybe it's a Russian colony, you know.
Well, because we know that they're going to a non-Weyland Yutani colony.
Right.
We
Yes,
know
they
that for
are.
sure.
Because they specifically mentioned Wayland Yutani synthetics are not allowed on
Yep.
non-Wayland Yutani planets.
Yep.
So, yeah, so something like that. Yeah, a Russian farming colony or something, you
Something.
know, the something. Yeah, something's wrong with the animals, man. I don't know. They're weird.
Yeah, and it could be the thing where it's like, that's really odd. Like all of these animals have been found with like their chests having exploded. That's really weird. And then, you know,
Yeah, maybe it's like a. Then it becomes like at first it's like a food scare. They're like, oh God, what's happening? All our meat's dying. All the cattle's going. Like, what the hell's happening? And then slowly you see uh xenomorph hybrids of other animals, and then you
yeah,
have a good action movie right there.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, and it's very like 50s sci-fi, like Alien Invader stuff because of all of the real life reports of like cattle being it's like they had all the blood sucked out of them and it's like and they're dying in weird ways. And then you
Right.
see that in a lot of like 50s sci-fi that obviously like inspired Alien later. Where it's like, oh man, they're on this farming colony. It's like there's these weird like things happening to these animals, which is very 50s sci-fi. And then you I again, there's so many things you can do with the idea of the xenomorph taking a myriad forms. Like in Alien versus Predator, when they have the Ujata xenomorph hybrid, it looks really neat because it kind of has the same, because it also takes the predator's tendencies in like it's hunting for sport, it's hunting for fun, and it's like that's really interesting. And
Yeah.
you could have that for just a bunch of stuff, and it becomes inherently interesting, and you're uh not just doing what aliens did, because you're now introducing this concept of like after a point the marines that are on the planet don't even know what they're up against because the xenomorphs could be anything,
Right.
and so they can't even really develop like an effective way to fight them because they're constantly changing and evolving. And there's like this idea that has been thrown around a lot in Alien. I don't remember exactly where it comes from, but that the facehugger eggs were originally designed as a weapon, right? Like as a biological weapon. You drop that, which is why they were being carried on a ship to begin with in like those big quantities, that they're like bombs. You drop them on a planet, they infect something, and then the xenomorphs go crazy. And it would be interesting to me to see what that looks like as it's going down on the planet, because again in Aliens we see the aftermath of it, we see what happens after it's all been completely destroyed. But it would be interesting to see like almost like a disaster movie where like as it's going down on this farming colony, you see the xenomorphs like taking over.
Right.
It's collapsing, right? They're eating people, and the characters are like trying to stop it. So that's my pitch to.
It's a great pitch because also we're also pivoting back to regular Joes,
Yeah,
just simple farming guys. Um,
yeah.
I think if they do that, I don't want it connected necessarily to Romulus. Like I don't want the movie
I
to
think
start
it
off
will
with
be
the
though.
is it going to start off with like Rain showing up and it's like because here's another thing. Is it going to start off, you think she's going to show up on the planet and it's already happened, or she's going to show up on the planet and she's going to watch it happen?
Yeah, she's gonna watch it happen.
Okay, okay. So we're
And
not going to do Aliens where like Ripley gets there, it's already messed up.
yeah, no, no, no. Yeah, and
Okay,
that's kind of the point with like the disaster movie angle, is that she knows what's going down because she'll have been the only person that will have heard of it. But like even the higher ups on this colony, because they're not Weyland Yutani, are not gonna know what's going on.
right.
And it could be like her and Andy, and then some I guess maybe non Weyland Yutani Marines. I don't know if the Marines are actually connected to Weyland Yutani or if they're like a separate entity. Again, I don't know the world of Alien that well. you can have Rain and Andy and a bunch of Marines going around and doing some crazy stuff, and you can have Andy be his badass self that he learned how to be, and yeah, and yeah, I don't know, hopefully make Rain a little bit more interesting, give her something, some kind of character, because she's really boring. Yeah, my pitch is this, what I've been describing. This is my pitch for Alien Remus. this is
This
which is
is
which is not only the working title. This is the final title. It is Alien Remus.
Alien Remus.
I just want to see more aliens, more monsters, more cool practical effects, because you don't get to see that every day anymore, and they're phenomenal.
More weird hybrids, please.
More weirdness. As weird as you can get. I love all of the phallic, weird, completely alien creatures that you can throw at me. Give me as many penises and vulvas and whatever the fuck else genitalia you want to throw at me, as long as they're throwing a cool looking monster.
Right. And don't forget your healthy dose of incest.
Yeah, maybe not that. I'm not. I would like to come out as being not pro incest, just for the record. But
No, I'm not pro incest. You can have incest to make it weirder.
yeah, but I don't think. But that's not necessary. I don't think it needs incest to. Oh, we're talking about Romulus.
Yes.
Remus does not need incest.
Oh, well, yeah, obviously, like that would just feel like a rehashed idea if they did it again.
Although it is taking place in what is essentially going to be like space Alabama, so maybe that works.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be so fun. I imagine the shot of like Rain and Andy touching down on their ship, right? The first thing they see is like a space Confederate flag.
Oh, Andy, we're gonna need to get you a completely new looking body. This is not it.
I really don't think they're gonna like you, Andy.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, is it because I'm a synthetic? No, it's not. That's not it.
That's not it. Yeah.
But yeah, that's Alien Romulus. Overall, one of the better movies we've covered on this podcast, honestly.
Yeah. Uh,
I think.
they nailed it. I think honestly in all aspects except the screenplay. I
Yeah,
feel.
no. Visually, really good looking movie. Fun sci-fi. Uh, Creepy movie, suspenseful, terrifying. It's great. I love it.
Yep. Hey, Hobo, what do you think about maybe changing the direction of this podcast to do some things outside of film?
We cannot do that. You see, I must put the company first.
What company?
Raid Shadow Legends.
We're sponsored? Why haven't I seen any of this money?
You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? The perfect podcast. Its structural perfection matched only by its comedy.
You admire it.
I admire its purity. A podcast, unclouded by conscience, remorse, or delusions of morality.
Look, I've heard enough of this. I'm gonna ask you to pull the plug.
I can't let you do that.
Well, I'm gonna pull it myself.
I can't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathies.